So we're going to get started here. This is session 3 of the Making Home Saturday series, Building Home. I'm Alexandra Hudkowski. I'm the curator of public programs here at the museum and have had the pleasure of organizing the suite of talks, workshops, and performances in conjunction with the Making Home Smithsonian Design Triennial. We are currently sitting in the exhibition here on the 3rd floor, which features 25 site-specific commissioned installations exploring design's role in shaping the physical and emotional realities of home across the United States, US territories, and tribal nations. It is the 7th offering of the museum's Triennial series. It was established in 2000 to address the most urgent topics of the time through the lens of design. Our programs for the Triennial have a host of people involved in their development, including the co-curators, Alexandra Cunningham Cameron, Christina De Leon, Michelle Joan Wilkinson, and many others from the staff of our education department, and Seamus from our AV department. Thank you. In addition, the museum would like to thank the generous sponsors who helped bring our Triennial year to life. They are Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture, American Women's History Museum, National Museum of the American Latino, Asian Pacific American Center, the Henry Luce Foundation, the Terra Foundation for American Art, the Lily Anschenkloss Foundation, and REARC Institute, who specifically helped with today's program. Okay, so this is the 3rd of 4 Saturday series for the exhibition, which is up until August. The last and final Saturday series is in July. Stay tuned for more info. Each session is meant to give you a deeper understanding of the years of work that went into the show's installations and give audiences a chance to explore the exhibition with special guests joining us along the way. As you know, today we are exploring cultural perspectives, models of environmental advocacy, and systems of indigenous building featured in the various installations in the exhibition. So far, some of you may have joined us, but we've had a performance by Lenape Center's Director of Music and Language, by Michael Davids, with Devon Tynes and Yo-Yo Ma. That was a good start to the day. And we also had a Tohono O'odham native food tasting in the garden with a group here from Arizona. Now, we're going to focus on rethinking environmental design systems for preservation and have Daniel Tommie, Houston Cypress, and Zarith Pineda here. Daniel and Tommie have come all the way from Florida, and Zarith is based here in New York. She's the executive director of New York-based organization Territorial Empathy. They will kick things off. They're going to introduce themselves, present their work, and then the co-curator Alexandra Cunningham Cameron will join them for a conversation. At the end, there'll be time for all of you to ask questions. Both Daniel and Houston have dedicated their lives to forefronting learnings from the ancestral past and have worked with AIRIE, Artist in Residence in the Everglades, whose triennial installation downstairs in the beautiful glass conservatory honors the communities and various ecosystems of the Everglades region and considers a worldview that expands beyond the human era. Similarly, in the South Bronx, Zarith just launched a new project called H.earth, a garden sanctuary for community care and activism, mutual aid, and cultural preservation. Can't wait to hear more, and please join me in welcoming them all to the stage here. Thanks.
Can y'all hear me? Imbikaloa Fashakio Mission Shanabish Kanchongale, Lukivili Lynchen, Hiona Punction, Ichiamgoa, Hindleos, Yakitisali Ali, Inyangan, Ilayamgik Folonko, Mado. My name is Daniel Tommie. I'm a member of the Seminole Tribe of Florida. I was given land acknowledgement to some of the tribes and nations that reside here, their ancestral lands. I'm here as a guest, and I look forward to speaking in front of you guys with this beautiful panel up here I get to be a part of. I'm a member of the Bird Clan, and I reside in Big Cypress Seminole Indian Reservation. What I do is I carve Seminole dugout canoes, and also I participate in Second Seminole War reenactment, which occurred in 1832 to 1847. And during that time, it was the United States bloodiest and costliest war that they ever engaged in. And that's due to the fact of how our war leader, Abiaki, was conducting the war as it took place. And he planned it out. People might think it's just random acts of violence, but it wasn't, because in the art of war, it clearly states of how to have your men ready for war. And the best analogy I can use is a boxer. A boxer has to take care of himself, what he eats, when he sleeps. His body, his mind has to be on the same page. Just like my ancestors were. They ate, they had clean water, they respected the earth. So we were good. And just like the boxer, he had to go, if the boxer's manager or somebody from his ring went to go check out his opponent, check out his foot movement and to see what to stay away from. We had scouts that did the same thing, that they would go and see what the army, we call them the blue coats, had, what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves, how did they go about doing their daily chores. So that was two things that the boxer and my ancestors had in common: being in physically good condition and checking out on your enemy. And the third one is very important, and that's the environment that you find yourself in. In this case, the boxer has to be careful in that square circle. He doesn't want to end up where his opponent is, and he don't want to be caught on the ropes or anything. And once again, my ancestors knew the land intimately, where to get the medicine, where the rivers were, when to cross. So the boxer has an excellent chance of winning. Therefore, and as a result, we never signed the treaty with the United States government. And it's mainly because there was an expansion going on out west. The gold was discovered, and you know the rest. So that's my reenactment part of it. And also, I do Seminole dugout canoe carving. I kind of started out a little late, and what I mean by that is I'll be 63 next month. So that helps me mentally, physically, spiritually. Because when I'm working on my canoe out there, out in the wilderness, nothing can take the place of that. There's nothing. I'm telling you, man. I got the 4 elements out there. I always start a fire. The wind comes in when it's so hot, and I'm like, man, what do you know? A nice cool breeze comes in and makes that day worthwhile. It is amazing to be able to be a part of nature and accept nature as what it is and live within the laws of nature, because we all got that in us. We all have ancestors that came from somewhere. We just didn't come out of somewhere and became Americans. You guys, we all have ancestors that had the struggle, just like our ancestors struggled. We all keep on going, keep on moving. We respect all people. We respect all animals that fly, that swim in the water, that crawl, that runs, 2-legged, 4-legged. That's the only way to live. Because if you can live like that and be able to accept life as is, then you should be successful and happy, because none of these isms won't be holding you down. That's what I try to do. And when I'm carving, that's where I go. I like to carve starting in the morning. I find that kind of almost fasting without nothing to eat, I can last longer. I can see what I'm doing physically, but I transcend. My mind can float around, and I don't, like I mentioned, it's beyond words of what I see and what comes to me. And I like to think that those are my ancestors communicating with me, telling me that I'm doing okay. And that's what helps me to stay young. Because whatever you do, you have to be compassionate and love what you do and look forward to doing that again and again. And that's what keeps me going. So I'm glad to be here. It's awesome. Thank you guys for inviting us to be up here, and all the organizations that are involved in making this possible. And thank you.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Zarith Pineda. I am the founder and executive director of Territorial Empathy. It is the first and only Latina-led nonprofit design organization in the state of New York history. I also have indigenous descent, and I'm so honored to be here with these two ancestors and leaders and preservers of the knowledge. I always think about my practice as a miracle of indigenous futurism, that the work couldn't continue without the work and the resilience of our ancestors. And that is also part of the reason that I came into this work as an immigrant woman, as someone that whose family had dealt with forced displacement. I always had a keen sense of space and belonging and what happens when that's destroyed at an early age. And I think that's something that we can all relate to in our indigenous past, but so many of us in different ways. After going to school and these different things, the architecture pedagogy was taught more in a formalistic and more starchitect approach, as if anyone that's done construction, as if an architect did everything on their own and deserved all of the glory. But as y'all know, it takes craftspeople, it takes skilled workers, and it takes ancestral knowledge that we are currently destroying and now is in peril with the current administration and the fascism, frankly, that we're experiencing, that puts in jeopardy indigenous knowledge and ancestors. And in the United States, who builds our architecture? When we really think about it, it's an undocumented workforce, predominantly Hispanic, that are climate refugees that live in predominantly agriculture subsistent countries. And we've destroyed their environment, and now they have no other option than to migrate north. And when they come here, we essentially create an apartheid system. And so what I've wanted to do with my practice, and unfortunately, Latina-led nonprofits only receive 1% of the philanthropic pie. So it really has been this labor of love and community. Some of our volunteers are here today, but it has been faith, it's been love, it's been community care. And I want to talk to you about our most recent project, H.earth. This is a rendering of the project, but I'll show you what it looks like done. This is in the Bruckner Monhaven Community Garden in the South Bronx. It is the site where the Bruckner turns, and as we know, for those who don't know, New York City, it is one of the Robert Moses expressways that bifurcated the Bronx. So this area is one of the most polluted areas in the entire city and one of the poorest congressional districts in the country. So when we think about living in the wealthiest city in the world, we think we have access to everything, but in this community, people don't, and it is a food desert. So this is what we built, and I'll go into the idea, but it really comes back to a simple sketch that's in the top left in a community meeting. And essentially what we do, we like to think that as architects and urbanists, we're doulas. that are facilitating the gestation and the birth of that community desire. We don't see ourselves as imposers, and we had this idea, and the community that we work with mostly that stewards this garden is indigenous Mixteca from the Oaxacan region of Mexico, and they'd been stewarding this garden connected to a food kitchen, which was their family restaurant that shut down during the pandemic. And as they were undocumented, they weren't able to apply for any government assistance. So they turned their restaurant into a community kitchen, and they were trying to make this garden as productive as they could without any funding. And so fortunately, because of our work, we received this grant from the REARC Foundation that's also funding some of the work today, and they gave us this miraculous opportunity to design whatever project we wanted with whatever community we wanted and whatever site. And we chose this community, and everything was built around this desire to reunite around the hearth. So what we can see here is a structure, and it is a community kitchen, but it's also a water catcher. And so you can see from the different images, but essentially it's a roof that's pitched in, and you could see it in the picture, and it's perforated. That is a rain chain that collects rainwater, and it goes into a subterranean system that filters the water. Everything's entirely off the grid. We haven't connected anything to a water main, to electricity. And what we've done here is that through understanding of the nature, through understanding of the ancestral wisdom that these communities have, we're doing seed harvesting, we're doing seed sharing, and we're growing food that is culturally sensitive to that specific community, that reminds them of home. And that way we're preserving heritage, and we're having field trips with young folks, especially some of which don't know where their food comes from. There was one child that was talking about pineapples growing from trees, and that is precisely the reason that this community wanted to change that in a neighborhood that's so removed from any type of greenery. We wanted to change those narratives. So in this hearth, you can cook. It looks small, but it's quite big. We've had cookouts, and I'll show you some of the pictures. Different events. You can see it lit up. We're doing maize. We were doing tacos. Have events, and essentially what we figured out with this design is that for a very minute amount of money, if we were able to deploy this system throughout the 550 community gardens in New York, we would have 8 million boxes of food, enough to give one to each New Yorker, and we would add $2 million worth of electricity to the grid, as well as generating untold amounts of water that would be deviated from the combined sewer overflow system, being a front line in a network for climate change, as well as shading, as well as mediating the heat island effect. And so it is so tied to the work that continues to be done, and it's why it's so important to hire craftspeople, to give them opportunities to think about the working conditions, because the knowledge that they have that shape this entire project, from the shape of the oven, which is mirrored by a lot of the Oaxacan ovens that were designed to protect around wind, so they were very tall, and all of these things that we don't learn in school or architecture school. It is so important to have these sharing spaces so we can learn from the craftspeople, we can learn these skills, these meditative practices that were handed down from our ancestors, and we can prove that with affordable, sustainable technologies that are very simple, we could do really meaningful change. And so here you see it, and actually, and you all are invited. At Bruckner Modhaven Community Garden. We're right now, planting season is crazy. It's really beautiful. Everything's blooming, as you can see in the fences. We have different planters, and we have roses and things that are starting to bloom. And it's entirely self-sufficient, solar toilets, baby changing areas. The community doesn't have to pay a single bill, and it was the only community garden in the whole city that during the November drought had water. The majority of community gardens are not connected to water mains. And so it's really a different way of thinking about how we come together in uplifting indigeneity. And then to close it off, this is some other projects that we've done at Territorial Empathy that always have to do with that, centering community and people. This is a bus that we that was a corrections vehicle that would take people to Rikers Island and incarcerate them, and we turned them into a community center for love and acceptance, all based on solar energy. So if you guys are interested in our work, Territorial Empathy, there's more that I could talk about, but I'll turn it over to my colleague. Um, Thank you.
Cool. So thank you, and thank you very much for your time and attention. And I also want to start things out by saying Happy New Year. Bringing New Year's tidings back home in my community in the Florida Everglades. We're celebrating this time of the year as the new year. We're coming out of the dry season, and eventually the rains are going to pick up, and we're going to enter into the wet season proper. So Happy New Year. I want to tell you a little bit about Love the Everglades movement. This is a project that me and my buddy started about 12 years ago now. And my buddy is Gene Sarmiento. He's an artist. He does paintings and ceramics and a whole bunch of other amazing things. And in my practice, I'm a poet. I also make videos and films. So we had been working for a TV show that was produced by the Miccosukee tribe a number of years ago, and that project actually took us into the Florida Everglades to record the stories of the tribal elders. And they were telling us about things like the loss of species in the Everglades, how the waters, the land itself was being poisoned, and how that impacts all the other species and life that depends on that. And they were also telling us about how that it impacts our own cultural practices and the ramifications it has for the circle of life. So we were really moved by hearing what our elders were saying, what our community was saying, and we decided to dare each other to see what we could do to support the community. And so the dares, the double dare that we offered to each other was, what can we do to to encourage people to give the water the respect it deserves? That's the first one. And then the second one was, how can we encourage people to care about the Everglades if they've never been there? So ever since then, the work that we've been doing under the banner of Love the Everglades movement has been an answer to those double dares. And so this involves creative solidarity with the natural world. We also make space for spiritual work, and we want to see positive change on the ground. So we're doing that through poems, through prayers, and through petitions. And so we also are trying to deal with the frustration that we have when working through environmental issues, because there's a lot of people that want to exploit the land for profit, and that's frustrating for us. And we're also seeing that there's a lot of procrastination. People want to study, and they want to study to study, and they want to make more studies. And so we want to see action now. Like, let's get positive change on the ground right now. So the work that we've been doing has evolved into becoming something like a concierge for Everglades action. Do you want to do something with plants? Do you want to do something with birds? Do you want to do something with fish? We got you. We'll recommend you to our friends. If you want to do something in support of Indigenous solidarity, we'll recommend you to other friends and make introductions like that. A concierge for Everglades action. But for me personally, I have a desire to dissolve the boundaries of what is the discourse, like what is acceptable to talk about. So the sciences, people that work in policy, that's amazing and that's great, but what can we do through the arts? What can we do through spirituality? Don't be shy. It's okay to talk about these things, because we realize that these modalities of art and spirituality can effect change just as, can effect change just like policy and just like science can do. So we're also realizing that in this work of bridging communities, we're bridging the indigenous communities with settler communities, and we're realizing that the Everglades is truly a place of rite of passage. Because for the indigenous communities like Miccosukee and Seminole and others, we understand this. We have these practices since time immemorial. But in working with South Floridians and working with Miamians, we realize that folks are taking these places for granted. For example, folks who are coming to the Everglades when they're children. Oh, I remember going to the Everglades in my 4th grade field trip. Or people go to the Everglades when they're leaving town for good. Like, I'm moving out of the state and maybe I should go see the Everglades and see what it's all about. And some people are just like afraid. Like, some people are literally afraid. They say that maybe there's something out there in the Everglades that could kill me. These are valid concerns, and we respect that. But we also are understanding and respecting the Everglades as a liminal space. It's a threshold, it's a portal. This is a place where the mystery and healing still exists, and we want to honor that. So we're looking at the Everglades as a place that is teaching us how to honor the value and the values of other systems, namely indigenous systems. So I just wanted to offer these ideas and these thoughts and these concerns because this is the work that we've been doing, me and my colleagues, in the Love the Everglades movement. Indigenous solidarity, inspiring action and doing things in an interfaith and multi-faith kind of manner. But I just wanted to offer these ideas as a way of introducing what we're doing down there through Love the Everglades movement and invite y'all to come on out and join what we're doing. We need your support. And I'm looking forward to getting to know y'all better in this conversation. So thank you.
Thanks, Houston. Thank you, Houston, Zarith, and Daniel. Really grateful for all of your time and your wisdom today. And thanks everyone for coming, and to the AIRIE crew. Miami's in the house up here in the front row. Um, You know, when we began developing this triennial exhibition, we thought a lot about the idea of what the United States is. We knew that we wanted to focus on the US. In the past, some triennials had been international, some had focused on US-based design, and we argued a lot. We argued a lot about, you know, what really like made up the US? Is it a state of mind? Is it a border? Is it a political affiliation or system? You know, is it geographic? Is it psychological? And I don't know if we never came to a final decision really, but we tried as much as possible, you know, to think about what the US meant to many different people. As many parts of planning the show, I think we landed on agreeing to disagree and maybe trying to bring in as many perspectives as possible as a way of starting conversations. And as all of you are speaking, and also through the work that we've done with AIRIE and the conversations that we've had related to thinking about the significance of the Everglades, the significance of environmental systems, of water rights, the idea of territory came up quite repeatedly. And I was hoping that you could all maybe share a little bit about how you think of territory. I know that, for example, Houston, you've really helped people understand that the Everglades National Park, as it's sort of designated right now, is very different from the ecosystem of the Everglades as it originally, you know, evolved over time. But if you could all share a little bit about this idea of territory, maybe Houston, you can start on that topic. I'd appreciate it.
So when I reflect on the idea of territory, first of all, like it reminds me of our tradition of ecological knowledge and just the idea that we are made from the land, and so that the land itself is shaping our culture. And so I start off right there that how do we identify, are we from the land, are we of the land? So the territory is us. How are we taking care of the land that we belong to? And also how wide and how expansive can we embrace that? Because right now we're dealing with very specific definitions of territory. I'm thinking of like jurisdiction, but how can we expand that to embrace the chosen family? The chosen family of the land, the chosen family of our ancestors, and the elements itself. So I just want to offer this expansive, more broader definition of territory, and then how can we embrace that chosen family that we all belong to. So like I would like to start it off by that.
That makes so much sense. I mean, I don't think it's an accident that our practice is called territorial empathy, and very much because of that. I don't know that I believe in the idea of a nation state, and that borders, I think, are always shifting, and I think humans have been nomadic at different points, and these are political constructs. So the idea of calling it territorial empathy was really that every time we engage, we ask ourselves, what is the territory? And is it a network? Is it an environment? Is it a WhatsApp group? You know, that's been something before. Is it is it something covert? Especially with this idea of sanctuary. And when we talk about the project, we haven't publicized it a lot, and we've been mindful to say somewhere in the South Bronx, because we are very in tune with what's happening politically now in the community that we're working with. The pictures that we share and all of these different things. So a territory could be, anonymity. It could be so many different things. It could be a bus or one of the animations that we scrolled by, but we did work on how COVID impacted communities of color during the pandemic, and we were tracking disease spread. So it could be really so many different things, and I think that's what's exciting, that when we kind of depart from like the school approach of architecture or engineering or administrative, like this is the boundary and this site and this line that is uncrossable, which of course is so silly. It's exciting, and I think it's exciting to challenge, what goes beyond that line. What is that environment? When does the space become another? And I think the pandemic challenged so much of that there was nothing that we could do. Humans were gonna human and spread germs, and we are a community whether we like it or not. And so it is so hard to define what that is the idea of being United Stadian a vibe? Like, is it, what is it? Of course, and it's not just American, because there's a whole Western hemisphere and what that means related to colonization. So that it's an infinite question, but I think it's a question that needs to be had so we understand how we relate to all these power structures. And I think that can give us some insight into how we move in the society.
Yeah, I can see how you guys were disagreeing to disagree and agree to disagree. So, yeah, territory, I think it starts with yourself, your family, your community, your city, your state, your country, which eventually take us globally, which means we're all in this. This is our territory as the human race, just like the ocean. Who belongs out there? The fish, all of these different species, different colors, different sizes. They coexist. So I think we can learn a lot from them guys, and drawing the line and saying this is mine and you can't cross this, and that's I think gone a little too far, because that causes problems, issues that can't be resolved, which in turn causes more problems for those who are within the resident of that area. So, but yes, absolutely, we need to have that conversation to where we can talk about these things, because it's coming to that point. We're at a pivotal point now. They're talking about drilling in the ocean. I'm like, holy Christ, I never thought that'll come, but here it is. And I was watching a program on the air flight up here. It's called Plastic Ocean? They were showing all these plastic down in the ocean, and I was just floored. I'm like, holy Christ. And then there's some countries where there's nothing but plastic. That's all they see. I'm like, holy Christ, how can this be? But once we look at the world as one territory, as our problem to solve, I think we can do it, because that's where we're at now. We're going to have to form that circle that never ends, and to be a part of that. You don't lead, you don't follow. You're just a part of that. So I think that's where we're at now. And I'm glad you guys brought that up, because it needs to be discussed, looked at, and and keep moving. So I would encourage you guys to look beyond who you are. Don't let them divide you with the color of your skin, your language, your football team. So it's okay, man. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay. It's all right. And we can all move forward and we can all help each other like the way life's supposed to be, like how life was. You know, when I was a kid growing up, I didn't know I was brown, right? Till I went to public school. That's when I found out I was brown. And it was a little challenging. It still is if I make it. You know, I tell my little girl, she's 10 years old, and I said, she's having a little problem with her little friends. And I said, hey, listen, baby, all these talk, they have no power unless you give it power. And I keep saying that to her. I have like 5-minute drive from my house to her school, and I talk to her like this, like I talk to you guys. And I think that's the only way for me to get the point across. Because when I was growing up in my grandpa's camp, my grandpa, my grandma, and the 3 sisters, and us kids, that was the territory, and that was my world. So if we can make this globe our world, not other country, not other language, then I think we have a better chance of being a part of that beautiful rainbow. Because you can't take no color out of that rainbow. If you do, it's not a rainbow anymore. And that's what makes rain so awesome. You know, I used to complain about rain. Now I don't, because it's part of life. It's part of the 4 elements that's necessary for you and I to breathe and to accept life as is. So once we do that, we need to be a part of the solution. You know, they say that the world's not destroyed by evil people. It's by those good people who stand by and watch and do nothing.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
And I think all of your practices are so engaged, and your lives are dedicated to creating sanctuary spaces, right? And I loved how you explained, Daniel. I mean, not just now in talking about a family unit providing a sanctuary. Also, historically, the Everglades provided a sanctuary for many tribes. Zarith, you're building sanctuaries, literally. And I don't want to call you out, Cornelius, but because you're here, can we go off script just quickly, and can you share a little bit about the Saltwater Railroad and the history of that sanctuary, of the Everglades as a sanctuary for many different types of people?
Hi, I'm Cornelius Tulla, artistic director at AIRIE and also artist and architect. And the Saltwater Railroad is essentially another channel of the Underground Railroad, but going south and into the Caribbean. So it's kind of this story of return that's not as widely known, but is such a large part of Florida's history, as well as serving as a space for displaced people, people finding liberation, and showing how the landscape itself, although seemingly is this kind of rough terrain, became home for many people. And I think the landscape still kind of accepts so many people and cultures and diasporas that find home there. And I think, as Houston said, this space kind of interstitially that's kind of going in between landscapes, specifically between the US South and the Caribbean, and just kind of the added history of this kind of movement of people. And so for me as well, it's been great to kind of learn this history that's not as known, and that adds so much more context to understanding the landscape and how vast it is, but also this kind of sense of belonging that people find and kind of make in kind of uncovering a lot of these that I would call hidden histories within our landscape.
Thank you for that. And I was definitely one of those kids who grew up in Miami and had a one-time experience at the Everglades and associated the Everglades really as a sanctuary space for plants and wildlife, and was totally disconnected from the human history of the Everglades, which is something that, you know, I think we all really need to talk about. And with Love the Everglades movement in particular, you're also bringing an understanding of how in South Florida, the urban design systems are completely reliant on the Everglades, and the water that is churning through the city is reliant on the Everglades. That the Everglades are not a remote natural resource, right? This is not a park that, you know, is intended to be preserved. It's a living and breathing culture in the Everglades. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the idea of water and justice and water and life, and dig into how access to water influences social and political systems.
Sure, happy to talk about it. Well, when you think about the history of humankind, whoever controlled access to waterways controlled trade, which in turn controlled prosperity, and that could be seen in so many different ways. But it is inherently political, thinking about how our resources are managed, replenished. It all inherently has to do with power. A lot of my work, and originally what started Territorial Empathy, was my research on herbicide in the West Bank. I spent some time in that region, in the Jordan River Valley, looking at how the Jordan River was being diverted by the different people in the conflict, not to get into the political nature of it, but really how the diverting of the Jordan River was creating different points of political strength along the river valley, and how, despite the differences, everyone depended on that same river for potable water. So it is inherently political, who controls water, and also the purification of that water in the systems, and then who monitors then quality. But thinking about it systemically, how it is replenished, how we give the ecosystem time to recover and replenish and do what it needs to do. And so it is all inherently political. And I think with, you know, in this capitalistic society where we kind of otherize nature, we're like, all right, these are utilities that we pay to Con Edison or the Water Authority, and that's just something that happens, and they take care of it. And it becomes like the trip to the Everglades as a field trip when you engage with nature, but there is really no consideration of where that water comes from, how it's cleaned. In New York City, we have this really interesting history of protecting aquifers, and how we protect water that comes from upstate, and all these different things that make it so that we have one of the better waters, but it comes from something that happened in the environmental movement in the 60s and 70s, and it makes us fairly unique in the region. So it comes back to history and rights and all these different things. And I think if we had more of a civic understanding and educational understanding, more rooted in indigeneity, where we think of us as part of a system, of a symbiotic relationship, instead of something that is othered, that we engage with as a commodity, we would maybe have a better relationship with taking care of it.
Yes. You know, I think it's all part of the masculinity of the thought, because right after the end of the Second Seminole War in 1842, thereabouts, the draining of the swamp was mentioned. So it's nothing new that we hear that draining of the swamp. And saltwater intrusion is real. It's coming into Miami-Dade, and it's coming further because, like it's been said, man-made canals, Army Corps of Engineers. You know, I'm not a great fan of a lot of the committees that determine of how things should be. And it got to the point where I got tired of being just a checklist, right? Oh, we talked to the Seminoles, okay, who's next? And they just went on ahead and business as usual by just coming in and talking, and I think it's we're getting to the point where again we all have to let our voices and action make the noise for us because that's the only way we get things done, especially in the politics. You know, in the 70s, the uprising started the some of the Clean Water Acts and some of the things that were passed that are being ignored or done away with now. So it's going out and voting. You know, I never voted for a long time. I was like, what the heck? Well, I don't need to vote. So, but I do now. I did, and I think that's where we're at because even if we, you know, the policies are what makes farmers accountable at Orlando that feeds into Kissimmee River that snakes its way down into Lake Okeechobee. We have a story behind that. And Army Corps of Engineer had the bright idea of making that canal straight. And they did at the cost of the public billions. I don't know how much it was. I don't want to say billions, but it was, I'm sure, millions. And over a period of time, they were finding out all the birds were disappearing, all the native fishes were starting to dissipate, and it was just terrible. So they had to redo the whole snaking of the river, Kissimmee River. That story is awesome how it's told and how it was created. And that's one of our stories, and that's how I grew up listening to oral stories because we didn't have TV. I thought it was just to put me to sleep, right? And it did, but I always like to hear it over and over and over. It's because, like I say all the time, language is not just a form of communication, it's a form of experience. Because when the stories are told to me, I can vividly hear it and be a part of it. And I get dragged into it. Now, you know, my grandpa was the best storyteller. And I long for that world. But today, my world is global. Our world is global. It's not just home anymore. It's just not one state anymore. It's not the United States anymore. It's around the world. Because everything we do, the United States, it affects other countries. And some of those countries don't have dignitaries that come to the table to advocate, to voice for them. And that makes it hard on them guys because they feel left out, like nobody cares. And we all feel that way. It's only human. So when they came in 1929, the 441 was completed from Miami to Naples. That was the beginning of the end for our canoes because the flowing of the water, river of grass, that flowed into the ocean as a filter was there no more. And we're facing all kinds of problems. But they're talking about, oh, we can create wetlands. We can create this. And I'm like, so what? Let's keep them the way they are. Let's keep them as is. They're on our footsteps. And we're still fighting them. I always advocate for, you know, they want to flood the lands and in the name of restoration. But they want to flood those lands so they can kick people out. And they want to flood the lands where our medicinal plants are at. And that's why I'm against it. Because that's how I grew up. My grandpa was a medicinal healer, and we had people there at our camp all the time. And my grandma was a strong woman. She would always have food prepared. So that's what made me who I am. And I don't draw no lines. I just advocate and believe and do what I was taught by what my grandparents and my mom did, and my elders and my uncles. So for me to say that I'm hating the other people, that no, I can't say that, because I'm doing what I know to be right. Because if I don't do anything, then I'm part of the problem. Yep, thank you.
And I think you,
Can I offer something?
oh, absolutely.
I just wanted to say that when considering these ideas of water, access, and justice, we definitely are finding and trying to find ways to braid these different kind of knowledges together. The knowledges that our ancestors are having, new design and innovation and concepts. And I'm reminded of these, of how the importance of braiding these knowledge systems, because there was a woman that was supposed to join us today. Betty Osceola is an elder from my community, the Miccosukee tribe. And there's a story that she tells often that is pretty meaningful for me at this time, because she tells us about, and this experience of living with the land is still very recent for our communities. Being able to hunt, being able to have our gardens, and all of those practices with the land is still very recent. It's only recently that we haven't been able to do that as extensively as our parents and our grandparents did. So thinking about Betty Osceola, when she was younger, um, her and her parents and her family were living in the big cypress forest, living with the land, fishing, hunting, gardening, and all that, until the day the state came with a flyer, and her mom couldn't read it. It was in English, so she had to translate the message. And it was basically saying, you cannot be a Miccosukee person, you cannot be a Seminole person anymore, because you cannot live with the land. You cannot eat this fish, you cannot have that garden. And so I think that was a very powerful story that Betty shares. And this is, for me, highlighting water, access, and justice, because what are we going to do about this situation? How are we going to help each other move forward? And this idea of braiding knowledge, I think, is something that's going to help us, because folks like Daniel, our colleagues Zarith and Betty, and many others are trying to find ways for how we can braid these different knowledges together. So what we're doing back home is finding ways to decolonize our approach to scientific work. And we do that by relying on the elders' wisdom to guide that scientific work, to create paths forward. So I think for me, that's what it's about. How can we work together and braid our knowledges together to clean up our act? Yeah, and you said something about access and being locked out, and that's still a very real threat for us back in South Florida. How can we continue to have access to the land? Because that push to bar and prohibit the indigenous folks from the land is still active. So let's see what we can do to work together. Yeah.
I think it's also extremely worth noting that the greatest conservationist of our natural environment currently are indigenous people from all over the world. I mean, really, that have the knowledge of the systems, the ecologies, all of these wonderful places that we have around the world. And if we don't protect them and we don't create systems to engage in these conversations, once they're gone forever. And talking about oral traditions or all these cultures or systems that don't have communication in the way that we do, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth preserving. Just to, talk about something as, the craftsmanship that we see here in the canoes and all these different things, but even in building now in New York City, with the diversity of people that we have here, you can't find a mason. We're doing a brick structure and you can't find people that know how to work with brick. We don't know people that know how to read the environment. We don't know all of these things that indigenous people know in their, historically in their bodies and their souls, and we really need to honor that and protect that, because once that's gone, we don't have that back, and it'll be, I think one of the things that most enrages me in this technocratic society is that we think that some a gazillionaire from Silicon Valley is going to come up with a solution for climate change, and we just have to hang back and wait for them to figure it out. And it's going to be carbon capture, or it's going to be, whatever it is, or these solutions that are so invasive that the Army Corps of Engineers is historically famous for. But that's what happens when you don't have a pipeline of people that are engaging with these professions, that don't have a sense of the land, of a relationship with the environment, and we're just perpetuating them. Less than 3% of architects and urban designers in the United States are women of color, yet the way that we measure the safety of public spaces by the UN is by the number of women that walk alone through those spaces at night. So we know that women make different considerations about safety, lighting, space, yet they're not at the table to design the cities that they inhabit. And that goes in so many different ways for gender nonconforming people, for the disabled, for so many people that struggle to feel safe in public spaces. So it's really important that we protect this knowledge, because without this community, this phenomenal community of Mixteca women showing up for their community, I wouldn't know about the different system, the milpa growing circles, these indigenous ovens, these shared histories and oral histories that then I got to share in, that were handed down from generations to inform a design in the South Bronx. We have to protect that so much, and I'm so honored that the work continues, and I just want to be able to carry that forward in whatever way I can through my practice.
Beautifully said. I have so many questions for all of you, but I think I also want to be conscious of time and make sure that anyone who's here in the audience, I know we have a lot of students of design, people from all over, has a chance to ask Daniel and Zarith and Houston a question. So please let us know.
Thank you. David DeCellis, architect, currently living in Boston, but shout out to Miami, that's where I grew up. Also a faculty member at RISD. We've got a lot of, RISD's also in the house, so we've got Providence in the house as well. Houston, if you're looking for allies, there are so many people that deal with water systems. I think that might be a way to find allies up and down the East Coast, certainly as a stepping stone, and maybe we can cross geographical boundaries and help each other out in future work. I've got a couple of questions, but first I wanted to say thank you to Alexandra and to all of you up there for the show and for being here. It reminds me of the first session today and the power of storytelling and how important that is, because I'm convinced that you're helping us become better people and better designers and better advocates. You're educating us, and that's a big part of advocacy. Question number one has to do with the exhibition Ebb Flow down in the conservatory, which is one of my favorite spaces. If one of you could confirm for me, because I'm an academic and I talk about the Chicky Hut, I'm wondering who did the quilting and the patterns on those cushions. If it was your friend Jean, for instance, Houston, I don't know if you could confirm that. And the second question that I have specifically for Danny and for Houston is, being a born and raised in Florida child who's now displaced and trying, like Zarith, like you said, to share the knowledge, there are some myths of the Chicky Hut. I'm wondering if the two of you could share a brief, maybe a personal story of what the Chicky Hut means to you and what it means to the Everglades. Thank you very, very much.
Good question. The Chicky is a Seminole Miccosukee word, means chigit, house. It could be a dwelling. It doesn't say what kind. The Chickees are made and constructed with a palmetto patch and palmetto fans and cypress wood. And our Chickees do not have any walls around it. And it's for a reason. When the hurricane comes, the hurricane just goes through it. And it blends in with the nature. At the beginning, they weren't as elaborate as they are now. They were more like a teepee, kind of, where they were constructed real quick, and especially during the Seminole Wars. So I know I grew up in a Chiquis where they had a, on the post that went straight across from one leg to the other, they used to have a little swing that had a rope around it, and then it went back again. So there was 2 ropes, and you were able to open it, and they would put blankets in there. And that's how they swung me to sleep. So, you know, I have fond memories of sleeping like that. The smelling of the smoke is embedded in my being. And that's what Chiquis means to me, is that it's part of my life. It runs through my veins. And it always will. It's not just a dwelling. It's part of our identity. It's part of our heritage, part of our legacy. And I used to help one guy make chiquis, and it's hard work. I can definitely attest to that. When you got to go out and cut wood and haul them out, and especially during the raining season, they peel easy, but they are wet and soaked with water and so heavy.
The Cypress.
Yes, Cypress.
Yeah, and I just want to offer the reflection of the fact that it's it's an adaptation to the environment that we're living in. When our ancestors were living further north, they live in different kind of houses, and so this is what's suitable for the area that we're living in. But also that there's different chickies and different uses for them in the village. And so that idea of home needs to be expanded more beyond the house, beyond the structure, and to embrace the entire village, to embrace the entire community even for that idea, that concept of home. That's how we work with it. There was a meeting that Miccosukee folks had with the federal government at one time, and we had a very big disagreement about the definition of home. The United States government wanted to limit us to this little structure when we had to be able to pass environmental policies that protected the whole island and the whole village. So we needed to expand those definitions of home. And for me, like that chicky is just one component of the broader idea of home. And that there's different structures. There's the cooking, there's the sleeping, there's the eating areas, and then there's other structures that we use for special and ceremonial and spiritual purposes that are more private for us. But for me, it's just expand that definition. Why box yourself in?
Yes, the cushions were designed by Christina Peterson, who is an artist in residence in the Everglades and a former AIRIE fellow. Yeah.
Did you have a question?
I just had a quick question for you. I mean, everybody has good energy, but you said you're 65, and you seem like your mind's, how much, what? 62. Okay, but your mind's real sharp, and you seem really healthy for your age. I'm 40 now, so I'm trying to figure out, like, do you spend how many hours a day do you spend outside? What do you attribute your youthfulness and your sharp mind? Yeah, what's your regiment? So that, yeah, can you give me some skincare and then real quick, I just had a comment. You were talking about what is the United States. I think a lot of it, that and the water, what is the water, depends on what narrative we accept. So do I own the land? Do humans own the land? Or does the land own us? And is the water a resource for us to make money, or is it a source of life? So maybe we can't find a definition we agree on because we don't have the same way of looking at life. But anyways, just that quick comment, and then I wanted to ask your fountain of youth secrets.
I can't tell you that. No, I think it's how you live and what you believe in. Are you stressing out every day? it helps to have a handsome-looking dad. My dad was pretty handsome, I have to admit. So, and my mom is a beautiful lady. She's in her 80s now. She's bedridden. I love her to death. She talks about she has dementia, she's blind, and she has hearing aids. Yeah, she's special to me. And I think it's, I go beyond that. I'm just so blessed, to be honest. And even though I may seem healthy, I had a heart condition that I had to go through, and I have a scar to prove that. And right now, I have another form of cancer that I'm dealing with now. And we can't just judge by people of how they look. We have to talk to them to understand the things they're going through. Because we're at this day and age, we just like to look at people and box them in of something and say, yeah, I know him, I know you. But do we? No. So I don't mind talking about my personal challenges, because I think, no, I know we all go through challenges, whether it's emotional, relationship, or whatever, medical. So maybe that's the trade-off for me. I don't know. But I do the best that I can. I stay out and work on my canoe, and I just love it out there. When I get caught up in there, I just get carried away, and I'm somewhere else with Grandpa, and Grandma. So I can't tell you there's a secret. I really can't, because we are who we are. I didn't say, hey, God, Creator, I want to be born to my mom, Mitty. I want my dad to be Harry. I want my grandpas to be this, and I want to be born on May 16, 1962 to be a bird clan. We all didn't pick that day. Nobody did. Because if someone has a problem with you, guess what? They got a problem with the Creator, with God. That's what I tell my little girl. I said, they don't have a problem with you. If they can't figure that out, they got a serious problem of their own. But yeah, there's no secret. If it was, I'd be trillionaire, and the world would be different. Musk won't be in there.
Okay, we have time for just one more. There's one last question.
So maybe just from me to close it out, I think you've all spoken so inspiringly about the work that you're doing and the communities you're involved in. How can everyone else get involved?
I would like to invite you all to come to the Florida Everglades.
Yes.
Come on out, come get to know the place. And for me, I like to do more things at night these days. So I would like to invite you to come to do some nighttime fun things. And I think for me, that's the first thing of getting involved. Go get to know the place, fall in love with it, go make some friends. So come on down. Thank you.
Very loud. I would think, it feels like an increasingly isolating time, and we feel really overwhelmed by everything that's happening in the world. And I found my sense of purpose through community work and through getting dirty and just showing up and, teasing each other and sweating through it and doing cookouts to pay for materials and just having a shared goal, whatever that is, local community, mutual aid group, where you feel like you are a part of something else, and it allows you to remove yourself maybe from the day-to-day. And I feel like service is something that is so good for the soul, but also so tying to community. And besides that, support initiatives like Territorial Empathy. But there's so many, donations are important, but also reaching out to folks and seeing what you could do. It could be volunteering for a couple of hours. It could be calling someone when they're having a tough day. So really, it could even be showing up to your local planning meeting. Those things that we get emails about and ignore. And it doesn't have to be big, but just choose one thing and try to go beyond your comfort zone and reach out to someone and see how you can help.
Yeah, you mentioned, you had the question about water too. Does it own us or do we own it? I think it's both ways because about 70, 80% of our body is water, just like the Mother Earth. So that's why we have to take care of it and protect it, like how I have to try to do my best to take care of my body, and you have to take care of yours. And together we have to take care of the earth, and that way we can take care of the water, which in turn takes care of us. Um, what was the question? How can I get you to come to Florida?
Well, I mean, you've all spoken so beautifully about how art and storytelling is a form of cultural preservation and environmental advocacy. And I guess a question, maybe to just close it out, because Houston and Zarith have also already offered some really important ways to get involved. What have you found to be the most effective way to to connect policymakers and communities or individuals? You mentioned voting, you mentioned protest. What's the final word?
That's it. Get involved. You don't stand by idly. Let your voice be heard, because collectively, we all can be heard. And I think it's going to happen soon, because the way it's going right now will eventually turn, and it won't be anytime soon. We may go through some turbulence, but it can be done because there's enough organization, there's enough lawyers, there's enough people out there that has enough common sense to turn this boat around, to ride it to where it's all about the people. And we can begin individually by being open-minded, by not being so judgmental of our neighbors. I think that's the start for us, because that's a learned behavior that can be unlearned for the better of you and I. Because once we do that, then the barriers are down and we're ready to learn. Because if we have this attitude that I know, hey, did you hear? I know. Did you hear about this? I know. If we know, then we're going to shut down the person who's going to have something to tell us. Even if we know, let him say what he has to say. It may change their perspective. Listen, not to respond. Listen with your heart. Try to understand what's not being said by being what's said. And in that way, you can relate to him, her, on the same level, and be able to do something cohesively as one. And that's what it's calling for now. We're at that point. We all have to work together. We all have to work together to save Mother Earth. She's in the ICU. We have to get her out of there, because Earth is a source of life, not a resource of life. And if we keep treating it like that, we're going to cut down that last pole, pollute that last water, and there's only one little blue dot in the universe that was created. What are we going to do with it? It's up to you.
Thank you.